Welcome to this week's edition of Alive Prompt. I am your co host for today's episode. I'm Katrinidad of Books and Vogue.
And I'm Shawanda Riley, otherwise known as Chocolate Auntie or Auntie Wanda. And I'm also the co host, and I'm excited to be here and looking forward to our conversation today.
Awesome, awesome. And this week's prompt is art imitating life in the foundations or inspiration of your platform. So let's get into that. Let's get
Yeah,
into that.
let's get into it. That is such a great question. I would say that's like a graduate school question, dissertation question, but it's got a lot of meat to it because the idea of art imitating life, a lot of times, especially in the world in which we live, we have life that imitates art, right? You see something on TikTok or on social media, and then you have somebody in life, like all of those wonderful social media challenges. That's an example of life imitating art, right? Um, but for my platform and for my podcast, the idea is that art, the creation of a podcast, being, as everybody likes to call themselves now, a content creator, the idea is taking what happens in life and then creating a platform so that people can hear, they can advocate for themselves, and they most importantly can identify with it. And so for myself, because I am an aunt, I am chocolate. The idea of creating a podcast where I am able to share those experiences, whether it's the experiences of myself, who is a child free or childless aunt, along with other aunts who are also custodial aunts, and then people who may be married and they have their own kids, but then they're aunts as well to the significant people in their lives. And what
I
about
love
you, Kat?
I love that. I love that. So for me, um, art imitating life for my podcast. Well, you know what? In general, I'm a big reader, as you can tell from the library behind me. This is my
Mhm.
Zen den, my sheep shed, my woman's cave, whatever you want to call it. It's filled to the brim with books, and so every book is it's like a window or it's a mirror, right?
Mhm.
For for any scenarios that may I can resonate with as far as my own life, it would be a mirror. I can see myself reflected in the pages. And for anything that may not necessarily resonate with me or anything I've been exposed to, it's a window into seeing a new world. And every single author that writes a book that I've read thus far, and I have over 600 titles in here, um, they are inspired by some element of their life or their research or their studies. And so there's a little piece of them in every single story. And so for me, literature is like the epitome of an art imitating life. For my platform, I have a podcast where I like to take art, the art of reading, and help you set your reading mood, right? So how you gonna situate your life to really immerse yourself in reading the story and just really getting into the pages. And then on my platform on Instagram and TikTok, it's more so life imitating art
Mhm.
because I like to bring the characters to life by cosplaying the characters from the book. And so for me, that's that's how it goes. Like it's sort of it's Sankofa,
Mhm.
that full cycle of they're both influencing each other. And my platform, with the basis of my platform being no matter how it manifests itself with either the art coming first or the life aspects coming first, it all goes back to encouraging an experience with literature and ensuring that I'm meeting you where you are to to appeal to you to pick up a book.
I love that. I love that. And I outside of being the auntie, I teach English, right? I teach it at a community college in the great state of Texas. And one of the things that I've found in the years of teaching is that students who read literature, whether it's they are connecting with the characters, is that it tends to make them a more empathetic person, right?
Mm,
And
yeah.
there's actually studies. There's actually studies that say if you read nonfiction, this is kind of your personality, but that if you're drawn more to articles or to works of literature that are fiction, that you tend to be more empathetic. And by that same token, when you have people read literature, they tend to be more empathetic, very much for the reasons why you said, because they see a part of them and themselves in it. It's the literature serves as a mirror. Sometimes that mirror is dirty and needs to be kind of cleaned up. But the whole idea is that the literature opens them up to seeing the world differently, but it also allows them to see themselves differently.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I never
Okay.
thought about that analogy. It really touched home to me and like I'm gonna be using that. Sometimes the mirror is a little dirty. I
Just a
love
little.
it.
Yeah. Okay. So now, this is just going to be like a free flowing
Yeah, yeah.
conversation. I ask a lot of questions as part of my natural disposition. So my question, because we're going to be going back and forth, it's the
Mhm.
idea of podcasting serving to advocate as well as promote the importance of kinship relationships, right? And in the African American community. And so, how do you see literature doing that? I know from my perspective, doing the podcast talking about the aunt, some people have play aunts, play cousins, and that all kind of weaves into how we build community and how we make our community stronger. And so, what about you when it comes to your books? Because in looking at the podcast that you have on your platform, so many of the titles have family relationships that are the centerpiece of the story.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think in that sense of how my podcast or the books in general can serve to promote the community. Every book is a different perspective, right? It is told through the lens, be it first person, third person. It's a different perspective of a family dynamic. I have yet to read a book where there's just loners and they're loners in the beginning of the story and they're loners at the end of the story. There's some kind of found family in that journey.
Hmm.
And so it paints the picture of what makes a family, right? It defines that. And as a reader, it helps me as a reader and a
Hmm.
black reader,
Hmm.
it helps me to understand. I mean, we could say all day long, um, you could be different and being different is okay, but it takes that representation of that dynamic for it to really drive home as a reader to see, okay, and here is an illustration on how that looks. It's not just a theory, that people just say. I actually have a story, there's a narrative on how those elements fit into the puzzle. Um, and it just makes you feel seen if your journey is the one being shared, and it helps you to be more compassionate
Hmm.
for those around you as well, because like you, I'm also an auntie. I am a childless. However, through reading, it allowed me to really understand that I'm not any less than a human
Right.
being, than a woman, because the difference in my family dynamic. So what
Right.
about
Right.
you?
Well, it's interesting. Oh, before I get to me, what is your aunt name?
So it all depends on who you're asking. Because
Okay.
the very first time that I became an auntie, I was just so happy. I was just so happy that somebody in my family, I have all brothers, I'm the only girl. I'm just happy somebody got a baby because you know the saying, mama's baby, daddy's maybe. but there was a baby in the family that my brother was claiming, and I was just like, "Yay!" So, I didn't care what she called me. I didn't care what she called me, and so, but at the same time, I grew up not being able to address my aunties, like, by their name. I never knew their first name until, like, much later when I'm grown. I realized that we were either addressing them by their middle name or a nickname.
Mhm.
So, with that first niece, I was like I felt the pressure of giving her something, to some kind of level of respect, and so I know I did not want her to call me Katrina. And so for the longest time, she was calling me Auntie Denise.
Mhm.
And then, when my younger brothers started having children, their little ones, I allowed them to call me Auntie Trina,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it still
Mhm.
wasn't the full name Katrina, so we were still respecting the Southern boundaries.
Right.
However, when I married, my husband is Filipino, and so all the nieces and nephews call me Tita. And because I go by the nickname Cat now, they call me Tita Cat.
Mm.
So, it all depends on who you're asking in the family. I always know who's calling by how they address me.
Right.
You know,
Right.
Tita Cat, Auntie Denise, Auntie Katrina, Auntie Trina. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Very much how the kinship relationships work. I say fictive meaning that's not your blood people, but you're like I have a friend. She has a son, and he calls me Aunt Shawanda. So people in my family, they call me Wanda. I remember as a child making that distinction. I wanted my family to call me Wanda, and then everybody in school and whatnot to call me Shawanda. And so my nieces and nephews, they call me Aunt Wanda. There's one that calls me Auntie Wanda. There's another one that calls me TT. And so it just kind of depends, like you were saying, on that circumstance and on that family dynamic. What I have found is that the names of aunts are very important because once again it signifies the closeness of that relationship. And when I first started doing like the research for the podcast, I being the reader, I was like, is there a book that talks about aunts, right? And I found one book. It's the Book of Aunties. It was written decades ago, and it was written from the British perspective, which was really kind of cool and kind of interesting. But there's not one kind of uh, book, or maybe that's what I'm supposed to be doing, but writing about the idea of the aunt and her influence within the African American community. Because what I've noticed, there's so many more TV shows and movies that focus on the aunt, and there's even a National Aunt and Uncle Day, which is coming up at the end of this week. So the idea of that person serving as an important piece in the family, and then the podcast being used as a vehicle to reflect that is something that I'm excited about.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, I'm looking forward to that actually. I marked my calendar for the 26th. I'm like, I will be celebrated on this day.
That's right.
It's
That's
going to
right.
happen.
That's right. That is right. Coming up this weekend. Coming up this weekend.
Yes. Oh, I love that. I love that. I love that. Um, so with that being said, um, what do you feel like well, you know what? No, backtrack. Let's discuss the mission and longevity of influence, right? Because when you have a podcast, when you have a public facing social media page, right?
Hmm.
There's a sense of responsibility there,
Hmm.
whether you want to be an influencer or not. And so there's a mission, right? There's a mission um, that you may have for your platform, but also a mission morally, right? A moral mission as well as and it can't be something frivolous or something that is currently in vogue because we're talking longevity here, right? We're not talking about a fad. So how do you think that would apply to you and your platform?
Well, the idea of longevity is a part of who I am professionally. outside of being a teacher, because we teachers, we influence people, and we have students come back after 10, 15 years, sometimes it's 2 years, and they talk about the influence that we've had. And as long as I've been at the college that I've worked at, I have seen and I've had students come back and talk about my class and the influence that it had on how they saw literature or how they saw themselves. There was one young lady in particular who she was going through a really difficult time with the death of her mother and trying to transition with her father's new relationship. And so when she came into my class, I was the object of all of that anger. And so it was very challenging because I was trying to, teach her writing and English, but I also saw that there was something else that she needed outside of what was in the book. And what you do when you're a teacher, you don't just teach the content because students don't just come with needs to understand what's going on. They also have other things that they're dealing with. And so we have a responsibility, as you said earlier, to try to meet those needs as well. And so in her case, she made it to my class. I invited her to come to my office a few times and talked. And, after she left my office, I remember going, whew, I don't know if I made an impact, but I'm going to just keep pressing forward. And she left the class and went on to, 4-year school. But years later, she actually emailed and said, I don't know if you remember me. And in my mind, I was like, I could not forget you. But I could not forget you. But she apologized and she kind of explained all of that. And one of the things that she said is that the way you treated me, even though I wasn't your child, but you treated me with the same kind of love that I needed that I wasn't getting at home, and it made a difference. And after, like I said, she apologized, and I told her I appreciated, and wished her best of luck. And so the idea of longevity is kind of built in to what I do as an educator. But I'm also a journalist. I've been a writer. I've been a radio broadcaster. My voice right now sounds a little froggy. Sorry to sound a little bit like Barry White on today. We've got stuff all in the air down here in North Texas. But I know and I understand the importance of how what you write, it remains, right? And I know that because of that idea, what I write remains, and that's part of my legacy. It's the same thing with that podcast. It's the same thing with the content. And one of the things that we have all learned with the World Wide Web is that nothing disappears off the internet. And so that is your legacy. And the question is, what is your legacy going to be? And so I appreciate it, just like your podcast, you are promoting literacy. You are promoting the love of books. How can you not listen to your podcast and then not go and say, I want a book. I want to go read a book, whether it's a 200-page book or whether it's a 50-page book. And that's part of that legacy. And that's part of what we do when we create content. We talked earlier about art imitating life. And so to us, the things that are important to us that we want to build a legacy on, it's what we do through the content that we create, whether it's individually having a conversation with the audience or having a conversation with a guest, or whether it's like what we're doing right now, because this is like a really good like meta conversation about what it means to create content. It's not just this is how you create a podcast. You go online, you get, you can buy a microphone and then you kind of say, this is what my topic is going to be. This is my theme song. But really, what is that legacy going to be of that podcast and of the content that you end up creating? And if you always have that, I'm not going to say in the back of your mind, but if that is the influence for what you do and for what you create, it will keep it so that what you do create has a lasting legacy and that it influences people beyond. Now, how does this relate to being an aunt? Aunts have a wonderful legacy in our families, right? I I remember as a child, and I know I'm dating myself with this one, watching a TV show called Sanford and Son. Da, 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 right? And I just remember being so fascinated by this tall woman with a pretty church hat, and she always had her purse and her Bible. And she always she said some crazy stuff to Fred, but she was always loving to Lamont. I don't know if you ever noticed that nuance. And she would be nice to Fred at times, but I just saw what a wonderful legacy, right? And even though as a kid I didn't know it was legacy, I just remembered her, right? And so here I am now, years later. I don't have the church hat. I do have this. I don't have a church hat. I don't have a big Bible. I do, and I do not have one of those church purses. But I do carry the idea, much like she did as a character, of being able to pour into people, being able to pour into them, and trying to understand how, even though you may not see what you're pouring into them right then and there, all you've done is your part by pouring in and giving them something that they may not have had before.
Yeah. Let me tell you, big hair is the new generation of big
It
hats. I'm
is. It
just
is.
saying,
I
because
know.
it just grows up, right?
Yeah, and
Closer you are to heaven.
you can and you cannot get a hat on top of this. So
Yes, 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 yes. You know, I wanted to hit on that as well, longevity, because I'm pursuing my master's degree in library science,
yay.
and it wasn't yay. I got my undergraduate in library science as well, but it wasn't until I started studying in this field that I realized just how important every single thing we do is, and how every single thing we do in some way, shape, and form is logged, and not just in the logs and the angels of heaven, but on earth. Um, like, for example, you got a speeding ticket. That camera that caught you, speeding, that goes in some kind of archives, and if a future self can go and research that and find yourself on camera, right? Um, if you're in any country, like let's say Germany or South Korea, I don't remember quite in Germany, but I know South Korea, they have CCTV, so cameras out on the street everywhere, right? And so there's some kind of log where your every movement. I don't mean like Big Brother, like every single thing is logged, but you leave footprints everywhere, right? And all of these different data systems. And there's somebody's job somewhere, someone's the librarian or someone or in that position of archiving, who is archiving that stuff for future, right? For record keeping. And so there's archives everywhere. And so everything you do matters. And it goes back to my southern upbringing, where my grandmother was really big about your family name, and you
Hmm.
do something and it reflects bad on your family name. Like everything you do, like you have to think, I'm not just acting in my own interest, but it's something that is going to go back and reflect like on my family, be it good or bad. And so with having a platform, you're just even more visual, like to the public. It's even more so is you're not just a face that was caught on the speeding cam. You're not just a face of someone doing something wild on CCTV in the street in the middle of the night. No, you have a name affixed to you because you with your platform comes uh, the ability for you to be more easily recognizable out in the streets, so people know who you are, like, and then
Hmm.
with knowing who you are ties back to your family.
Hmm.
So, you have a mission, not just your own personal mission and your goals for your platform, but you have a mission to yourself and your family to make sure that everything you do is leaving a positive mark, and even if it's not positive, just make sure it's something you believe in because it's the mark is there, and we know who it is, who left it.
Okay.
But,
Okay, so
yeah.
you've talked about your grandmother, right? And her influence and basically saying, don't shame our family name. Don't get out,
Mhm.
as you say, don't get out there and act a fool, right? Because we will find out, and when we find out, we will come for you. Um, can you talk about some of the advice that either from your grandmother, an aunt, a bit of advice that had a positive influence on your work? Now, I say positive influence because I tend to see everything as half full. However, I am learning that sometimes negative experiences can also can also propel you forward in an awful, and I'm going to say awful sometimes because sometimes it's through trauma that people work through healing, but it's also through sometimes negative experiences. that you end up realizing, okay, I'm better than this, and I'm going to move forward.
Yeah. So your podcast really taught me the importance of aunties in the community. And it's like one of those things that I never really paid that much attention to it until I listened to like a few of your episodes. And now it's like things that I can't unsee because even that quote that I got from my grandmother, she got it from her mother. And guess what? Her mother, the woman who raised her, was her aunt
Mm,
because her mother passed away when she was 2, and then her aunt stepped in and raised her like she was her own, and she knew her whole life that this was her aunt, stepping in as her mother, and she never had children, and we all called her Big Mama.
mm,
Everyone called her Big Mama.
right.
I think even my grandmother called her Big Mama. Everybody called her Big Mama, right? Um, and yeah, so a lot of things that even my grandmother said was things that Big Mama said, right? Um, and so not only did she make the comment that be wary of the things you do because it's your family name, but she also had this quote that I absolutely love. She used to say, now this quote could be a double-edged sword. You could take it like, okay, she pumping me up, or not so much, but it if the shoe fits. But what she would say, you made your bed, now lay in it. Don't matter how you make your bed. If you made your bed, you gotta lay in it. So at the end of the day, whatever whatever you do to craft, your environment, your life, the things that you choose to surround yourself in, these are the shoes you have to walk, right? This is the life you have to live. That's the bed you gotta lay in. So that was one that I think had a major impact on me, even if I felt like I can get away with doing this. No, my family never know. Da da da. I always thought that, well, will it be consequences later? Because it's my bed. I gotta lay in it.
And there's always consequences, and you don't see it at the time, but those consequences end up coming up. For myself, it may not necessarily be advice from an aunt, but sometimes I'll call them auntie observations, right? The auntie observation of, oh, um, you're gaining a little weight. As a matter of fact, I went to my father's family reunion about a month ago, and his older sister, who is now the matriarch of the family, she looked at me, and I, menopausal, so I've gained, a little weight since the last time I was there. And well, I can't blame it all on menopause. It's probably just the chocolate as well. But she said, she said, "Oh, you really are now starting to look like a Riley." And she looked right at my hips, and I was like, "Really?" That's the first thing she said. And I know she was happy to see me. I know she was happy to see me. We had a good time. But what did that tell me? And was I a little self conscious the rest of the time I was there? I tried to cover up the caboose, and then I looked at my other aunts and cousins and everything, and I said, well, some things just are generic. So in her own way, she gave me some health advice. She gave me some health advice. She wasn't trying to say, eat these blueberries and blackberries to lose weight, but just that one little observation. And we all have those aunts, and I love her. I love her, and I appreciate her. Maybe I should tell her, I appreciate you telling me that I'm really starting to look like a Riley now.
Yeah. It that story brings to mind a similar story that I had from an auntie. So all my life I've been thin. Couldn't get past it, right? All through high school, my aunts, well, this aunt in particular, but all of them on the my father's side would comment, you know, you ain't child, you ain't got the hunter, but you not gonna get the. I don't know if you it's ever gonna get to you. The hunter has a butt, a prominent derriere shape of the derriere, right? All through high school, couldn't happen, couldn't happen. My one cousin, she had the hunter butt. Well, she got it all day long. I went to the military, went to Iraq, came back home, and I know, I had put on some weight, so I thought the only way I was gonna get it, if I got some weight on me. Um, Even though they kept saying, as a kid you start to get it. But anyway, come back home from Iraq, and I'm just so proud of, having some weight on me. I go see my auntie Hazel, And as we're getting up to go, look back. I said, "Auntie, I got the honey bud yet?" She looked at me and with a straight face said, honey, you don't have the honey bud. You got a birthday booty." I was like, I was so undone. I mean, I got the message. I was a little overweight. I needed to lose it. It wasn't quite the honey booty, nice, cute, petite, but it was like, yeah.
That's
But
right.
got the message. Got the message.
That's right.
Auntie didn't hold back.
And that's that auntie advice. So we've got a couple minutes left, and we have a few questions. I don't know if we're going to get through all of our questions, but there
I
is
think
one
we
question.
can. I think we can go over.
Okay, all right, we'll go over. It's executive decision. We'll go over. All right, so
Yeah, yeah. Let's do this.
okay, so I talked about aunts. Can we shift gears and talk a little more about books because you had some questions
Okay.
about books as well.
I do. I do. I do. I do. So, could you name a book that you believe encompasses the vibe of your platform?
I can do more than name it. I can show it to you.
Ooh, yes, please.
Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto by Tricia Hersey. Have you seen it? She promotes the NAP ministry and the idea of rest and the idea of how rest, not just I'm going to take a nap, but it's the idea that resting is important to being a creative person. And that if you spend all of your time running, and you don't take the time to rest, you don't allow yourself the ability and the space to kind of breathe and then come up with these all wonderful ideas. And so even though rest is resistance has nothing to do with the aunt per se, but it's the idea of how my podcast, it allows me to take a break from all of these other wonderful things that are maybe causing me stress in the world. And it's a place, it's like my respite. Even though it's work, you've got to, record it and upload it and promote it and everything. But it is really my place of rest and respite away from all of the things that are going on in the world. And so for me, it is this book. And as you can see, I have tapped it. That's how we roll, we English people, and I'm sure you got tapped. So this is to me has been an amazing book. As I've gotten promotions and other stuff on my job, and how do you maintain that balance, and how do I move forward professionally, but yet still take care of the things that bring me such joy and great peace, which is creating that podcast. What about you? You got a
For
lot of books.
me,
I got
I
you, and
know
you.
I have a lot of books, but the book that's coming to mind, I no longer have. I want those people after I've read the book and loved it. I want someone else to love it. I'm that
Mhm,
auntie that gives books for every holiday, birthday, any occasion. And
mhm,
so I've long ago given away my copy, and I've had four copies of the book, four different copies of the book. I've given them all away, but the book that's coming to mind is Binti by Nydia Okorafor. And I'm saying Binti because in the story she presents uh this tribe, this African tribe uh, of nomadic people is presented
mhm,
in the book um that are being are the setting with the setting being in the future
mhm,
and it being I guess it's on the scale. No, it is African futurism
yeah.
because the main protagonist of the story, she got accepted into this university program, which is an intergalactic program, and so she goes to outer space. She gets to see all of these other uh, beings, so to say. She finds herself in danger, and she's able to get herself out of it. Reflect back on um, something she learned from her people and this tribe, even though they're nomadic, they're a lo- people don't really look to them as having a lot because they don't have a lot of tangible things. They not a lot of objects that they do, but they're known to being phenomenal at mathematics, arithmetic, whatever you want to call it. They are great at it. and she uses her ability to just come up with these equations in her brain to um, sort of defend herself and her friends. But I'm not gonna go any farther because I don't want to ruin the story. But definitely check it out. I say that reminds me of my platform because um, with every story, similar to the story of Venti, I like to try to take you outside of your norm, outside of the world, outside of the world as you know it, right? The story, I want something to be completely different, even if it's contemporary. It's going to take you to a completely new world. Um, you're going to have experiences like you never thought you could ever have, but at the same time, there'll be a sense of familiarity in the sense that to create this new world, to really engulf yourself in the book, you are gathering up things that you are familiar with, things that you have, like it's going to engage all your senses, but you're combining them in a new ways, a way that you probably wouldn't have thought of combining it before. Like for example, if I was reading Bridgerton, I wouldn't be reading Bridgerton because I like books with a lot of diversity, and the actual series of Bridgerton don't have enough diversity, unlike the show. But for example, if I was reading that, um, I would have a little teacup, tea in here. I'm drinking pecan pie chai. I have a little side dish of scones. I have a nice little hat to the side or fashioner. This works. This works. I'll be reading in my garden. If I don't have um, any hibiscus or roses in bloom, I go out and light an incense. I light a candle to really engage my senses to like. So we're there with that. And so, I make sure that it's that time in the day right after the sun is risen, but not when it's full noon. Like it's that nice little temperate and it's
Mhm.
bright, that you can read without being wholly uncomfortable. Um, but I make sure all of my senses are engaged as I read the book. And so I'm surrounding myself with little objects that I'm already familiar with, but
Mhm.
the combination of it all, I wouldn't normally be outside in the petticoat and the fastener with tea and scones reading a book. So it's the combination of it all that makes it otherworldly and its ability to transport me to be a spaceship for me to transport myself into the pages. And so yes, that's why I feel that Venti is the vibe of my platform.
I love it. And one of the things I loved about your podcast is that as you were talking to the different authors, you asked them the question about the vibe, but you go beyond like what inspired you to write the characters, but you talk about kind of the sensory things like what do you see, what do you smell, the idea of setting your reading space. All of those sensory things will help enhance the reading experience.
Yes,
So
yes.
that's great. I think that's
Thank you.
great. All right. So we've got like one more question. So we're going to
Oh
make
yeah.
this one quick. How do you distinguish your podcast from others with similar focuses? You've won lots of awards. Literacy, despite how it started here in the United States for us as African Americans, where it was outlawed for us to know how to read or write. You're now part of this wonderful movement of bookstagrammers, right? You called it,
Yeah.
where people who promote literacy and reading. Well, it doesn't have to be a classic like John Milton or Langston Hughes or Alice Walker. It's just the idea of reading something. And so, how do you distinguish your podcast and your creation, TikToks and everything, from the other similar podcasts and cultural creations out there?
Well, I do two things.
Okay.
Two things. One thing, the first thing, the number one basis is it's not about me.
Mm-hmm.
My platform is about the author. Each iteration, each episode when I'm presenting a book is about the author. It's about showcasing that book. Each post that I do where I'm cosplaying a character, it's about showcasing that character. Of course, we know that's me underneath it, but it's about showcasing that character. It's about presenting that book. It's about presenting that that is the object. Like I know I can be on my page giving my own personal review if I want, but I'd rather not. I mean, yes, I have my opinions, and if you want that, follow my Goodreads or follow my library thing or follow my story graph. But my platform, I want to give that space to the authors that I'm trying to promote. And of course, I love the book or it gave me some kind of feelings because it's on my platform. If not, I won't. I mean, you don't make time for things you don't like.
That's true.
And right. And then the second thing that I think differentiates my podcast from other podcasts is it's me. It's me. I mean, it's me.
Yeah.
I can't be anybody else but me. And yeah, I don't really try to compete with other books and grammars or other podcasters because I feel like there's room for everybody at the table,
Hmm.
right? There's room for all of us to have a platform and we can just be one big platform community. People
Hmm.
can follow you and follow me too. You say things differently than how I say things, and so yeah, it's me. It's
Okay.
me, and I'm just another piece of the puzzle of
Okay.
the bouquet of flowers that you can um engage in, that you can enjoy for your edification. What
That's
about you?
Well, for me, when I took a more like kind of like strategic approach because I was like, when I was planning the podcast, I was like, I wanted to be something different that's already out there. And when I saw other auntie podcasts, I was like, oh no, I can't do that because someone else already has a podcast out there. And then I let go of that because, like you, it comes from my perspective. And my perspective is a little different, even though I'm an academician and I tend to be like, well, this is according, like I said earlier, the research says blah, 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 blah. But outside of the research, I love just having good, meaty conversations. And I like to be able to shift from that scholar who does know the research to the aunt who is just talking about the experience with my aunt who told me I'm now a Riley because I got that caboose, right? And so for me, what distinguishes it is that it actually adds to the conversation that's already going on out there. I'm not necessarily trying to put myself where I'm the only auntie podcast because I'm not. But what I am trying to do is just show that there's multiple ways that you can see your experiences as an aunt, and that nobody's way is more right or more wrong than yours because it is your experience. And so it may work for you and for others. And if it doesn't work for other people, there's some other podcasts and other content creators out there that may be more to your liking. And so for me, it's focused on what I believe I'm supposed to do, which is to advocate and to promote the awareness of the importance of the aunt and the family, which is why I've got National Aunt and Uncle Day electronic greeting cards that you can send to your aunt, right?
Oh, oh,
Yes,
oh, please
yes.
share.
You can download those and send them to your aunt because Mother's Day they've got greeting cards.
Mhm.
They don't have any for aunts, and so years ago, when I created the podcast, I created those greeting cards, and they're still on my website. So, but anyway, all right. So we are near the end of the podcast conversation, the Alive Prompt. It's been a great. This has been such a great conversation.
It has. And before we start closing out, I just want to give you your flowers. I
Yeah.
absolutely love the platform that you created about amplifying the auntie and the black community. I love your voice. I went back and listened to season one of you, and I'm just like, where you were just carrying the show with just you, no guests. I could like listen to you all day.
Oh, thank you.
I love your voice, the way you relay it with everything with such compassion, and you could tell that you're speaking from the heart. And I just love you so much. I'm like, I can't wait to see you, so I give you just a big hug.
We can do
Right?
right. Well, and I,
Mm.
I love your energy. I was listening to yours and I was like, wow, she's got the way she starts everyone, and then I love the cosplay, and then you have the authors reading part, a small piece to kind of whet the appetite of the readers, which I think is you. Now, you listen to it, but seeing you, you see, okay, of course she's going to do that because that's Cat or Tita Cat. But yeah, but likewise, give you your flowers. You've done an amazing thing with the promotion of literacy, and as someone who believes as a teacher, and being literate is important. Whether you read the big ones or the small ones, just read. I think it's amazing what you're doing. So keep up the amazing work.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm gonna tell you like this young lady told me one time at this book festival. We were standing in line to use the restroom, and she turned around and she said, "Girl, I like your outfit." I said, "I like yours too. I was admiring yours." She said, "Well, you like my outfit, I like yours. We should be friends. You know what? You like me, I like you. Let's be friends forever."
I love it. And that's talk about influence,
Yes,
longevity. That's what it's about. That's what it's
yes,
about. So, um, this has been a great conversation. I usually end my podcast with an auntie affirmation, and
yes.
so I'm gonna ask you if you have a quote from a favorite book or an auntie affirmation other than "You don't have the hunter booty" that you can share.
I have both. I have
Okay.
both because I'm extra. Myself
Okay.
extra. I'm extra.
Okay. Got it.
So the first I'm going to share. But first, I'm going to preface by saying, I'm one of those people who I've always felt odd. I always felt like not black enough.
Mm.
I got teased, called a white girl, this, that, and the other. But the older I get, the more I'm like more comfortable with myself. But Nettie Okorafor, my favorite author, in her book Akata Witch wrote, "We embrace those things that make us unique or odd. For only in these things can we locate and then develop our most individual abilities." And then the other day, I was scrolling through Instagram and I saw the perfect affirmation, and it said, "In order to be number one, you must be odd."
Because number one is that odd number. Going
Yes.
back to that math. Going back to that math.
Yes.
Amazing. Wow. I don't want to. Those are such good affirmations. I don't have anything to share. Actually, I do have one
Yes,
by,
please. I
by
love
an author,
affirmations.
and it is by one of my favorite writers, Ralph Waldo Emerson. You know, old school. He wrote in the 1800s, influenced people. When it comes to peaceful protest, civil disobedience, you know, if you've done history. So he wrote a quote, and it's actually here at my desk, so I'm reading it to the side, and it says, "What lies behind us and what lies before us is nothing compared to what lies within us."
Oh, I love that.
Yes, and I have that here. Oh, I'm sorry, hit the mic. Sorry. But I have that here at my desk to remind me when I'm doing stuff, when I was finishing up my dissertation, and good luck to you with your master's, the idea of what's in me. It's not about what's external, it's what's internal that's going to make the difference. So, all right.
I love it.
Okay.
Well, let's share with everybody where they can find us
Yes,
online.
yes, 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 yes.
Uh,
You go first.
for, okay, okay.
Yeah,
For
yeah.
me, you can find me on Instagram, on TikTok, on pretty much all the social media networks at Books in Vogue. That's BOOKSENVOGUE, like the singing group in Vogue. Or you can check out my website at www.booksandvogue.com. What
Okay.
about you?
And me, you can find me on Facebook. Who can't you find on Facebook? You can find me on Facebook, Shawanda Riley. It's a pretty uncommon name, so I'm easy to find. I'm also on Instagram at Shawanda Wright, chocolateauntiePodcast.com, as well as the Alive Podcast Network. So I'm excited about what's ahead and what lies within us, and looking forward to seeing the great things that you're going to do, and how you continue to promote the importance of literacy, as well as the energy and the vibe within
Right?
our community. So thank you so much. This has been a great conversation. Thank you to everybody that's been listening. I know we went over a little bit, but in the preparation for the show, I told her I'm an extrovert. I talk. I'm a radio broadcaster, so I really talk. But it's been an amazing conversation. So thank
It
you.
has. It
And
has. Thank you
and
so
thank
much.
and thank you to Angel and the Alive
Yes.
Podcast Network for giving us this opportunity. So amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so
Right. Everybody,
much.
have a wonderful day.
And make sure that you tune in next week for the next live prompt. There will be two new hosts with a
That's
new prompt of the week, and I'm sure it's going to be just as exciting.
That's right. All right. All right. Bye bye. Bye, Cat.
Bye. Bye, guys.